Just pick up your phone and dial pound 250 and say Boost Infinite. That's pound 250 and Boost Infinite. You'll have the option to receive a one-time auto-dialed text message from this station's network.
Welcome to Hour 2 of this KBLA Talk 1580 exclusive, Days of Dialogue, the anatomy of anti-black racism and bigotry. Here's your facilitator, Candace Carnicelli.
Let's continue now with Days of Dialogue, the anatomy of anti-black racism and bigotry on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm your facilitator, Candace Carnicelli, and I'm going to invite Shikari to finish what her thought was before we went to break.
I actually want to defer to Adrian.
Yeah. Okay, great. Adrian, go ahead.
Well, I agree with all of that, both in terms of sort of a validation perhaps of what we heard, a reflection of people feeling unseen, and I've heard that a lot over the course of the last year. But I also think that it will be a reflection of the weakness of the progressive infrastructure to be able to field a candidate who was able to take him down. And so I think it's both a reflection of the resources that are required and whether or not those resources were able to be mobilized, of the actual apparatus in place to be able to move a candidate onto victory, and to make the case to the constituents in that district about why he is an unacceptable representative of the community. And so it will also say something about where the progressive infrastructure is weak and unable to respond to something that is frankly a crisis.
In some ways, I'm sorry, Tyrone. In some ways, this is in the weeds, Adrian. And I'm not going to call any names. You can go online and read it for yourself. But I was fascinated to see his reporting the other day, and the folk who giving him money. Not everybody's running from him. Not everybody's scared of him. There are some significant people on that list who have made contributions to his reelection campaign. So again, it's not a foregone conclusion, and not everybody's been scared off by this. I'm sorry, Alex.
The thing I'm challenged by, and I was just talking with Shikari about this at the break, is yes, it's sobering. Yes, it's disheartening if he wins and if he's reelected. But there are 14 other council members, a number of progressive members on that council. We have people on the school board who are moving issues forward. We've got people in the legislature. We've got people in the county, and so I'm challenged with putting a lot of focus on this one person who may win election, and looking at. I try to be optimistic, try to be hopeful, looking at the bigger picture in terms of the depth of the issues that are confronting the Black community. Whether it's issues around homelessness and poverty, whether it's the massive criminal justice system that we're confronting, whether it's the challenges in the education system. So I tend to look at, okay, yes, if KDL wins re-election, it does affirm in many ways, and it will provide for me at least a momentary pause, like, damn, wow, folks saw all this, heard all this, didn't see the remorse, and yet and still said, we're going to reelect this man. Okay. But then I look at everything else that's taking place, and I see hope in terms of progressive movement that's leading LA. I see hope, and we talked about other council members who were just recently elected who are in solidarity with Black communities, who are helping to achieve progress on these issues. So I see hope there. And I think we ought to focus on those other folks who are trying to move an agenda in solidarity
focus
for
on
the
hope.
Black community.
That sounds good.
As opposed to just saying, hey,
Yeah.
Kevin. So I don't really. So when the question was raised around, how does Nuri feel? How does Kevin feel? They can feel how they want. It shows an absence of character, a lack of leadership, a failure of accountability. But I want to look at those other folks who are day and night pounding the pavement, locking arms with our communities, and saying, hey, we're not going to walk in the same shoes that this person has walked in. Yeah. We are going to push forward and pressing on a solidarity agenda for Black and brown communities that can help move LA forward. So that's where I stand and think about when I see this issue moving forward.
Great. Specifically in regard to what you just said, taking off from there. So what, in your opinion, is the best way to ensure diverse representation on our city council?
Vote. We got to vote.
somewhat.
And we got to run.
And we got to run.
Yeah.
And we got to run.
And we have to build a bench, if I could. This is Sha'Carri. Few people know what transformative politics and leadership looks like. And so they default to the status quo framework that we are within. So my question to us as a beloved community is, what are we doing to invest in training candidates, training residents who live in diverse communities to run? What are we doing to build a financial infrastructure? Like, let us question how people come to power and how we can expand that pool. How can we train black and brown people together to lead?
This is Tyrone. I appreciate Alex's point. We have to vote, but I think we have to be an informed voting body. And by that I mean we need to keep receipts. We need to watch who are the politicians who are speaking up in this moment, who are the ones who are silent. Dr. King's words are, in the end, we won't remember the words of our friends, but remember the silence of our enemies.
Exactly.
I'm sorry, the silence of our friends, right? But I think we have to make sure we're clear about who are the folks who are not saying much, who are the folks who are not as vocal, because in some ways your silence is complicit in this moment.
Absolutely.
And so when these folks come up for re-election, or when they come up for election, or they ask for a vote, we need to ask, where were they when these tapes came out? How did they speak out? How did they push back? How did they mobilize the folks to make sure that this was not going to happen? So I think the best kind of voting entity is an informed voting entity that has a long memory in some cases, because folks will come around as if what happened a year ago today did not happen, and act as if we're supposed to have collective amnesia. And I just don't think that's what we want to do.
Yeah, and I think that why people, in the way that you were saying it before, like they about running again, like people just think, well, people have amnesia in LA, so I'll just pretend like it didn't happen, and then time will pass and people vote again, whatever. So
I think we have to be introspective to do that work that Tyrone's talking about too. So who didn't speak up? We also have to think of what institutions have not been present and or need to speak up more louder, or be not accountable, but there needs to be some transparency there. So even within organized labor, yes, we can't just assume that the progressive movement and organized labor is pro-black always. So how do we address that and talk about that openly, and then also tell the leaders that are in those positions, you need to address this and speak up, because we are not hearing what seems to be what you're saying or your messaging, but I haven't heard it from you.
yeah.
I think one of the other ways we do that, actually before I do that, I would just press back just ever so gently and lovingly, Alex. I take your point that we should be watching the bigger picture, the bigger frame, and not just this one race. But if Kevin De Leon pulls this off, he didn't win by just voting for himself.
That's true.
So my point is, there's still a statement there. A whole lot of folk went to the polls to vote for him, if in fact he pulls this off. So there's a chorus of voices there, and I think if that happens, the city's got to have another conversation about what it means that his community stood behind him after all the drama. So we'll see how that plays itself out. But back to your question, Candace, about how we ensure a more ethically diverse council. I think it's not just those persons who are elected. This, again, came up on Monday. We didn't get a chance to delve into it as much as I want to kind of fine-tune it now. And that is the staffs of these persons who we elected. We started the Monday night program in conversation with Paul Krikorian, the president of the city council. And I had a conversation with him, and he was not at the table live, so I pre-recorded that conversation before we got to the live program. And so I didn't get a chance to play the entirety of it. Maybe we will at some point here on KBLA. But I pressed him on the makeup of the staffs of those persons who we elect to lead the council, including the president's office himself. And the numbers are damning. When you look at who they employ, who they hire to run their offices are not reflective of the city that we live in. And so it's not just about pressing them and asking these questions when they run that we've already established in this conversation, but it's going, I think, the next step and asking what they're doing to make City Hall across the board reflect the breadth and depth of the diversity in this city. And that's a conversation that we haven't really gotten to yet.
Yeah, I think that the point of having diversity, no matter what community you're representing, that within the structure of the entity that you're running, there must be diversity if you are operating, especially, anywhere, but especially in a city this size.
Exactly.
With the demographics that we have.
I would come on top of Tavis's point. This is Sha'Carri Byerly of Iterus Public Opinion Research, is to say that we have a real crisis, in democratic responsiveness for Black Angelenos.
Yes.
We, in our last CAP study, African American Policy Priority Study, among Los Angeles voters, only 12% strongly agree that the people who represent them in public office are responsive to the needs of the Black community. So in addition to the reflectiveness of council offices and of our council, what are our elected officials doing about Black inequities and Black disparity? And the fact that homelessness, the face of homelessness, is Black. And when I say Black people are a diverse community. We often don't talk about Afro-Latinos, Black indigenous people, Black mixed race people. And so when can we talk about equity on our council and really get behind an agenda that breaks down some of these disparities? Black people in California have the highest death rates and the lowest life expectancy across all racial and ethnic groups. So when you talk about that weathering and the toll of this disproportionate impact of homelessness, of the housing crisis, you have a community in Los Angeles and California that is under pressure and overburdened by economic inequality, political inequality, and social inequality. We're still here. We're not going anywhere. We're resilient. But as my friend Jasmine Canick says, the only place that the Black population is growing is Skid Row. And every single city council member should be concerned about that.
Shakari, this is Capri Maddox, and Shakari, to your point, you're right. We need to be on this, and I want to be intentional to say that Los Angeles is a message center. We are the city of angels. Angels are messengers, and so these problems are going to crop up, whether it's on the East Coast or wherever. It may not be the same configuration of folks, but we need to send a strong message that hate has no home, not only in Los Angeles but in the United States of America, and especially when we are looking at coalition building opportunities. We need to set the example and set the roadmap of how things are done. And I think Los Angeles, if any place can do it, it needs to be Los Angeles. And I want you to know that whether we like it or not, we're united. Thinking about the COVID-19 crisis that Dr. Jerry is talking about, African Americans and Latinos died in larger numbers as a result of the COVID crisis, which is why our department, LA Civil Rights, was fortunate enough to receive money from City Council that was leftover COVID dollars to go to 9 community neighborhoods. And actually, we're in the process of still giving out about $8.5 million to community-based groups to deal with some of the inequities of systemic racism, because it's real. The same neighborhoods that had the highest numbers of COVID-19 mortality rates, surprise, also have the highest number of overcrowding, rent burden, food desert, the digital divide, environmental racism, right? So we are actually targeting money to neighborhoods like Pacoima, Southeast LA, South Los Angeles, Boyle Heights, Westlake, you name it. So we are in these communities, and if people want to get more information on these grant opportunities, because these are live grant opportunities, you can go to laisforeveryone.com and go to participatory budgeting. But I want to also make one point, is that as it relates to staffs, and as someone that works in local government, I actually was asked by Councilmember Kokorian's office to help him find representation in his office. And there were many people that were talented, that could have been high ranking in that office space, that said, no, it's too far. Or if I want to run, I should work in a different zip code. And so I think it needs to be on all of us to, when you get the call, to step up as well, and to not think that we can only succeed and thrive in one area of the city. So thank you.
All right, thank you. There's a question related to what you were just speaking about, part of what you were just speaking about. So number 15 on the sheet, on our page 9, says, What is the best way to address the disproportionate rates of housing insecurity and homelessness among Black, Indigenous, and people of color? So what is the best way to address the disproportionate rates of housing insecurity and homelessness among Black, Indigenous, and people of color?
What's the data say, Shakari?
Well, I think we need basic minimum income for people. That's a start. People need the resources to pay rent.
I would also add to this is Tyrone. We need more affordable housing. Mm-hmm. We need better lending opportunities. Mm-hmm. We need better wages. We see. I mean, we got a worker revolution on the horizon where folks are sick and tired of being sick and tired, as Fannie Lou Hamer would say, right? Mm-hmm. That they want decent wages. So it's complex and it's layered. But we need a culmination of different things working. The eradicating of racism. That's part of this as well. Mixed income housing. So it requires, once we can get this right in Los Angeles, I think in many ways it can be a blueprint for cities across this country.
Yeah, I agree.
And people see the solution to housing in their neighborhoods. When we can, see a high-end development go up with all deliberate speed, but when it comes to affordable housing opportunities that take, years and years to go up and be built, people can see that. And so we've got to be able to figure out a way to have some urgency about creating affordable housing opportunities.
We have to look at the root causes of generational poverty. Mm-hmm. The work that folks like Michael Tubbs of In Poverty, California, and Shamika Gaskins of Grace are doing to really address the root causes of poverty, which are all the things that Tyrone and Shakari and others have said, but also extend to the type of education that people are getting. It extends to what happens when folks are going into prison, come out of prison, and where they are situated, right? Mm-hmm. And so, getting at the root causes of poverty, the generational poverty cycles in from generation to generation, and it's disproportionate among Black people in particular. That's where we have to attack and to address in order to help solve what is now this existential sort of homelessness and housing crisis that we face, not just in this city, but across the nation.
I don't have any answers to this question. I did want to say, going back to diversity on our staff too, Shakari, you mentioned, so it really is equity, justice, and inclusion, not just the demographic makeup of the team, right? And so are those principles, are they stated, are they intentional, needs to be at the conversation as well. As far as the housing crisis, I don't know if we have the answer in this room per se. Of course, we would love to have more housing inventory. I don't know how we necessarily get there. But one thing that we see at psych hospitals and in our clinics is that people have this idea that mentally ill people and people with substance use and addiction end up in homelessness. But what we need to also be honest about is that homelessness creates the problem of mental illness and substance use. And especially when you're leaving incarceration and you have nowhere to go, guess where you end up? And you do end up on the streets. And it is really tough. And that is going to weigh on anyone's mind. And also when it comes to using substances to self-medicate, including alcohol, it is all related. So if we don't bring all these pieces together and recognize it's all related, we're not going to really solve. Housing's one thing, but homelessness is a really packed issue that we need to dissect in very complicated ways.
And I appreciate that, Doc. I think the idea around who is unhoused is critical, but what we need to have is a significant shift in the narrative of how we characterize who are those folks who are unhoused. Most oftentimes we think of folks who have substance abuse issues, folks who have mental health challenges, but the reality is you got everyday folks who get up and go to work every day, who live in cars, who live in shelters, children who are unhoused, who go to school, folks that we walk by on the streets every single day, and we don't tend to think of those folks as part of the unhoused population. I think if we understood that, maybe there would be a greater sense of compassion and empathy for us to do something different, to do something radical, to do something bold when we saw the fact, when we recognize that these are folks who are holding down sometimes 2-3 jobs, but still don't have enough to make ends meet. If we start to also talk about folks who do constant couch surfing, moving from place to place to place, I think we have to begin to put a different face, a more realistic face. And to Shakari's point, it's Black folks who are overwhelmingly representing that population, but the majority of those folks are not substance abusers or not, mental health challenges. They're working everyday folks who just don't have the means to have their basic necessities met.
Absolutely.
What I wrestle with Tyrone is this, though. You made this point beautifully a moment ago, and I wanted to sort of push back if I can. First of all, when you talk about poverty, it seems to me you have to talk about poverty, income inequality, and economic immobility all at once. It's not just one, it's all three. Poverty, income inequality, and economic immobility. Having said that, what disturbs me, Dr. Howard, is the point you made, again, beautifully, is that the face of homelessness in this city is increasingly black. Black males, to be exact. The data is incontrovertible. We all know that, and we all see it. That's the reality. Then you layer that with the fact that there's a black woman now who's in charge of trying to address that issue. You see where I'm going here. I'm not so sure that for all our protestation, for all of the angst that we expressed in the election, and for the opportunity that we've given Karen Bass, I'm really not sure. And I pray for her every day. She's at the top of my prayer list. I'm really not sure, so long as the face of homelessness in this city is black. Do I need to finish my sentence?
And I want to jump in here, Tavis.
Yeah.
We Ivitarus has been the primary pollster on addressing homelessness in Los Angeles County for the past 10 years. Voters will have an opportunity to reauthorize that funding that is dedicated to addressing homelessness. But I think part of what we need to do is narrative change, as Tyrone was talking about. The fact is 47% of Black Angelenos are housing a friend or a family member who would be at risk of homelessness. So the perception often among other communities is Black people don't take care of their own. And frankly, among us, we have that perception. We look out and we see, well, immigrant families, they'll live 2 and 3 to an apartment, and, we can't get along. That narrative is false. And it is a pillar of white supremacy, because when we actually poll Angelenos, we see that Black people have the highest percentage of actually taking in loved ones. But where's the social support for our families that are doing that? Black people are disproportionately impacted by foster care because of these systemic issues related to lack of opportunity and poverty and incarceration and lack of reentry services. So again, we need to look at the policies that are creating these inequities, both historically as well as those that are perpetuated now. And we need to change the narrative. We need to tell the story of Black agency, because other communities do not hear it. They don't know the history, and other people are controlling our story. And that needs to change.
Right. And, I'm really grateful that you brought up, some of the other causes, like, even foster care system being the pipeline to being unhoused. But you should know that as someone that fights hate and discrimination for a living, we have discriminatory practices in employment and housing and other areas that actually contribute to people being unhoused as well. And if you feel that you've been discriminated against, you can actually also go to lasforeveryone.com and put in a claim. And if it's happened in the private sector of commerce, education, employment, housing in the city of Los Angeles, we can bring a case at the LA Civil Rights Department on your behalf. And if we can't help you, we will make sure that we give you a warm handoff to an agency that can help folks. I think the other thing I want to say is we know what needs to be done. I mean, the State of Black LA was just done by the Urban League, Mr. Lawson over at the Urban League. We have had reports. There are reports that are going out now from the county and the city about Black people experiencing homelessness. Ronell Hampton did a lot of that work with Dr. Scorza from LA County. So, people know what to do. It's just a matter of us doing it. And we, as city, county, state, we need to be intentional to say there's no wrong door to, fighting, fighting homelessness in Los Angeles. And I want to also be intentional to commend the work that Mayor Bass is taking on and really using her political capital to take, the fact that homelessness is the number one issue in the city of Los Angeles, as something that she is championing in her first year, and is doing a lot of work to make sure that people are getting inside through the Inside Safe program and other initiatives as it relates to the unhoused population. So I'm glad to see us moving forward. We're not where we want to be, but we definitely aren't where we used to be and where we could be as a people.
I just wanted to take a moment really quickly just to recognize that we do have a black woman senator now in the state of California, LaFonza Butler.
Yes.
So that's really exciting to see. And the question is, will we have a black woman senator moving forward? And there are candidates out there. And then we also see that we're going to have a new governor. We're going to have a new lieutenant governor. Are there opportunities here to organize across the state beyond Los Angeles to address the very issues? We talked about hope and where we go from here. These are opportunities right in front of us, and we need to make sure that we're talking about those intentionally now. Those races are being set up for next year.
Excellent point. I want to ask, how do you think we as community in LA can best support Karen in fulfilling the vision that she has?
She's on my prayer list. I said, at the top of it. Yeah.
Like, are there specific actions that we can request the community do to?
I'll say one thing. If you own property and you have units that you'd like to make available to the city of Los Angeles, there are a lot. There may be people who own motels, properties that passed down. Some folks have moved out to the suburbs. If you have available units, you should let the city of Los Angeles know. And again, because there's a motel conversion, Project Room Key, and other programs that are happening in the city of Los Angeles where we could use the help. Building units is one thing, but there are available housing units that people are holding in the city of Los Angeles. So that's just one of many, many things. But really for us to all step up to say that this is, our number one issue. And, it's the humanitarian crisis of our lifetimes. And there's a lot of crises that are happening right now. We're in the wars and rumors of wars and pandemics. But I think we need to be intentional to know that if folks do have units, that would be a big value add to the city of Los Angeles.
Thank you. So we're going to go to break in a moment, but I'm going to ask that when we come back, is there a specific action that I, as just a Los Angeles member of community, that you would recommend me to take? Not a property owner. Okay, so we'll just sit on that while we go to break.
Time is truly wasted. There's no guarantee.
Disagree without disrespect. Make your point and keep it pushing.
Let's do this.
Listen and learn or talk and teach. Talking and listening around the clock. KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Amber Payton. Here's the latest on the Black Information Network. A former Colorado police officer is being found guilty in the death of Elijah McClain. Back in 2019, a 911 caller reported a suspicious person, and officers Randy Rodema and Jason Rosenblatt later encountered McClain, an unarmed black man, in Aurora. McClain died after officers subdued him and EMTs injected him with ketamine. It's not clear when there will be a floor vote to elect a new Speaker of the House. House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries says Republicans are holding Congress back with delays in electing the next Speaker.
House Democrats are going to continue to put people over politics and to fight to make life better for everyday Americans. From the very beginning, that has been our objective.
Meanwhile, Democrats renominated Black Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries of New York as a formality. That's the latest. I'm Amber Payton on your home for 24/7 News, the Black Information Network.
Over in Pico Rivera's 605 North, after Washington Boulevard Slauson Avenue split, an accident on the right shoulder with heavy traffic from the 105. A solo vehicle accident in Inglewood has been cleared from the 405 North before Manchester Boulevard, La Cienega Boulevard interchange, and watch for slowing and recovery from the 105. In Garden Grove's 22 East between Euclid Street and the 5 Highway 57 interchange, watch for some slowing as well. 91 East, also in Anaheim between Glassell Street, Kramer Boulevard split, and the 91 Express lane continues to run heavy over an hour.
Lowe's knows fall is the perfect time for outdoor projects. Right now, you can keep your yard looking its best and save. Take care of leaves with leaf blowers starting at just $89.98. Lowe's knows home improvement. While supplies last, see store for details.
Now back to more of this KBLA Talk 1580 exclusive. Days of Dialogue. The anatomy of anti-black racism and bigotry. Here's your facilitator, Candace Carnicelli.
Let's continue now with Days of Dialogue, the anatomy of anti-black racism and bigotry on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm your facilitator, Candace Carnicelli. So we were talking right before the break, looking at what were potential actions that the general community members could take in regard to supporting Mayor Bass in the vision that she has for ending homelessness in Los Angeles. So, Capri, do you want to go back to...
Yes. You should expound, Capri, on one of our guests. There are a few people gathered in this building who are listening and watching this conversation live in real time, and somebody just stepped in. I don't want to out them by name per se, but had a great reference to the faith-based community. Capri, you might want to sign off on that.
Right,
as well.
And as a member of a large church here in Los Angeles, a member of First AME Church, we took this issue on under the leadership of Reverend Chip Murray in the 90s. And I think it's important to know that our church communities, our faith-based communities in general, have parking lots. They have structures that are unused. They have space that oftentimes isn't used during the week. And so that's a place where we can have services and resources, but to also be intentional to know that those large parking lots aren't as full as they used to be. And so there are real estate opportunities and partnerships, and of course there are CDC's community development corporations with a number of faith-based institutions. And so that's a place where I think we could use the assistance. And then of course for the average Angelino, you all could be intentional if you have a family member that is at risk of being unhoused, to definitely to reach out until we can build enough units in the city of Los Angeles to make sure that we have that support. And then the last thing I want to say is for us to just support the mayor. And to if she's using her political capital in this space, don't leave her out there on her own. So I want to let everyone know that even if you don't have a place to put someone, if you don't have any resources, if you're in philanthropy, of course, you can give us lots of money, or some of the billionaires that Shikari mentioned earlier could be generous to help us. But I think it's very important for us to just use our voice, because that's something that all of us have, and your personal political capital to support the leadership in this city as we fight the crisis of our lifetime.
Capri, I had a quick question about the housing situation then in supporting our mayor with some of the commercial real estate that's going empty, and also with tools like eminent domain that the government may have at their discretion. Are there opportunities beyond just, do we have space on our church parking lots, or, an auxiliary unit in the back of our, home? I don't know. Are those opportunities that we're exploring? Or
I'll say this, is that everything is on the table when you're dealing with a crisis. This is an emergency. And that is what Mayor Bass came into City Hall doing. The very first meeting as a general manager that I had with Mayor Bass was in the Emergency Management Center. And with all of the general managers to declare an emergency as it relates to homelessness in Los Angeles.
I think one of the ways, Shikari, that we can support the mayor in this moment, to Candace's brilliant question, is to realize what's at stake. We got to get in the right frame here. And I said earlier, I was only part joking when I said she's at the top of my prayer list, because I understand what's at stake when it comes time for re-election, which will come much sooner than you think. She cannot show and prove and convince Los Angeles voters that she made some strides, that she made some impact. So you're the poster. You've done the data. So I just wonder if you might, for my own edification, and for those listening, I suspect, might say a word about what really is at stake if we don't get behind her, if she doesn't make some progress on this issue. Eric Garcetti left office and people were just disappointed that he just didn't make any progress on this issue. And he's a white male. So you see where I'm going here.
Yes.
If a sister promises to deliver on this, and we look up in a couple of years, and there's not some evidence that we've made great strides or some strides in this progress, what happens to Karen Bass?
Yeah. And I think what happens to Los Angeles, if I may, Tavis, because people in Los Angeles are weary. They remain. We recently did some polling on how people in Los Angeles feel about homelessness and the lack of progress. They believe we need bold leadership. They believe we need to think outside of the box on how to address this. And I think people want to see a difference on the streets in their neighborhood. We must make an effort to get everyone in and get everyone into quality housing. We were also just doing some focus groups among unhoused people. And the quality of options that are available, even in our motels, are inhumane living conditions. So to Candace's question, what can everyday people do? Number one, support housing for the unhoused in your community. And that's a tough ask for some of us, but we must do it. Donate your time, your talent to the effort. Show humanity and compassion when you walk by tented encampments. People have a real safety concern, and we have to acknowledge that. Both safety, a concern for the safety of those who are unhoused and living in those conditions, but also their personal safety. So we have to, voters are willing to deal with the situation and invest in a humanitarian way, but it's up to our leaders across the county to work with Mayor Bass. So even if you aren't in the city of Los Angeles, work with your local mayor and city council member to get behind the leadership that the city of LA is trying to offer.
And I'm thinking, I have a friend who I've known for about 5 years now that I met through the race relations dialogue that we do, and he is out on the street every day, and he's got his garage filled with things and people, and he's just out there every day, one-on-one with people, and it was a real wake-up call, because I think the majority of us, first of all, I live up in the mountains, so there are homeless people around, but not like when I drive into LA kind of thing. And I think a couple of things. One, just to be mindful of the fact that the opportunity to create beloved community, to honor the dignity and worth of everyone, if you just pull up and you see someone, to not look away, to smile, whether you have money or not, whether you're going to do that part of it or not, but to acknowledge the humanity of people. Because I think it's gotten so overwhelming for so many people that are just trying to get the average Angelian, just trying to, now with everything going up, prices, and I think it's really hard for people to just get through the day, and people are working 2 and 3 jobs, the average middle-class person also. And, you just see that, and you're like, I'll think, well, I'm going to engage, but then I don't. So I think it's really important to just remember that makes a difference, oftentimes a bigger difference than we could imagine.
If I can chime in, this is Tyrone. I think there's 3 things we can start with. I think one, get involved somehow, some way. There are councils, there are boards, there are different kind of entities. Find a way to get involved, no matter how small it might seem. But engagement, a civically engaged populace is one that makes an impact on its community. We have too many people who sit on the sidelines and criticize other folks who are in the arena, who are trying to do the work. So my thing is get involved. Second thing I would say is inform yourself, right? I'm continuing to be just blown away by what misinformation exists around homelessness in the city. The kind of alternative facts that exist around why people are unhoused, right? Become critical and understand the layers that we've discussed here around the complexity that is what folks who are unhoused are going through. So you've got to inform yourself so that way.
Where do you recommend people look to get that information?
We live in the information age. All you've got to do
anywhere,
is
everywhere.
That's right. All you got to do is pick up that thing
city.
that stays stuck to our hands and our hips, and just go to Google and type in root causes of homelessness. And you get a wide variety of different topics. And there are folks who've written about this. Earl Edwards has a wonderful book about homelessness across this country. So I think we've got to get engaged. We've got to get informed. And then 3, I come back to something that Capri said earlier around using our voice. And this is also about narrative change. If we're going to support the mayor at this point in time, we've got to help folks understand how hard this lift is, how difficult this lift is, how deeply rooted and how sort of multi-generational this lift is. We have to help shift the narrative, because there are folks who would see just the numbers and say, well, look, the numbers have gone up since she's been in office, so she hasn't done anything. That's just not true. The numbers may have gone up, but that's because there's still been a lot of lifting, and the factors that are at the root cause of homelessness are continuing to just churn away. Inflation is up, gas prices up, housing, everything is up except wages remain flat.
Right.
And so we've got to help to kind of create the narrative change, so that the folks who choose to be uninformed are not going to let these false narratives sort of dictate what they think is happening or what is not happening with this mayor.
If I can just co-sign on what Tyrone's saying, because there are any number of organizations who are out there fighting this fight, that actually do the analysis, who work with Shakari to figure out how are we talking about this and what do people need to know, so that people don't have to do the research on their own. They just need to engage with the resources that actually exist. And some of this is about, and Shakari said, work with your elected official, whether they're a city council member or county or state assembly member. But some of it is also about be in their faces, right? Because there is a way in which some of the policy decisions that need to be pushed require us to engage directly our elected officials and ensure that they are on board with the kinds of changes that we need in order to be able to have, cut the red tape on building and all those kinds of things. We need to be engaged and in people's faces. Councilman Harris Dawson on Monday said, stay in the streets, right? And he was not just talking about, around the tapes, but all of these issues, right? So the importance of people staying and being active and being engaged, because ultimately, if we bring it back to the tapes, the people that were on those tapes talking about undermining Black political power are also the people who were making decisions about these policies, including policies around homelessness. And so our ability to both, again, push back and repudiate that sort of thinking, but making sure that we're saying to the rest of the elected officials that when we are thinking about how we're addressing a critical issue like how are we housing our neighbors, that you will not bring whatever your personal bias is, right, into the conversation about the decisions that need to be made. And we also need to think about, for the successes that the mayor has had, we need to lift those things up. Right. I think we don't actually talk enough about things around some of the victories that have actually created some changes. We don't talk about the supportive housing that's popping up down along Crenshaw. Right. There are things that are happening that are successes, and we need to figure out how we make sure that the community is informed of those things, so that they see those victories and feel like there's more that can be done and more that they can do as individuals.
And just really quickly, this is Shakari. I believe Kevin De Leon represents Skid Row or parts of downtown.
That is correct.
Yes. So what we're talking about here, just to bring it full circle, the person who represents the zip code where Black people are growing, the only place where Black people are growing in population is in the very district where we had the center of anti-Blackness and political disempowerment.
Which raises another question. What say we about the Black folk in that district? We've been talking about this in the context of the Latino voters in that district, but there's some Black folk in that district. Right. And it raises some fundamental questions about what they do, what options and choices they have if you're Black and you live in that district. Yeah.
Just a cautionary note about the go look online, because we saw a lot of this in COVID-19, the distrust and mistrust people have in the medical system. We know that medical racism is real, and so we're really trying to combat things like disinformation, misinformation. We do believe our house is on fire, and that social media platforms do need to be mindful of closing down, shutting down some of that conversation that's killing our communities. And so, yes, look online, but we got to be really careful about which tools, which platforms, who's telling us what, because we saw it kill people during COVID-19.
Yeah. Yeah, good point.
If people need information about the city of Los Angeles, you can go to www.lacity.gov and get information, whether it's how the council is maybe shaped in the future, or how redistricting works, who your council offices are, even learning about your neighborhood councils, et cetera. So if people want to get engaged and they want to do it in a safe way in the city of Los Angeles, you can definitely go to lacity.gov.
Great, thank you.
That's pretty much.
So in the time that we have left, I'm going to ask what feelings, thoughts, and reflections, are you holding at this moment for yourself, your family, and your community? What feelings, thoughts, and reflections are you holding at this moment for yourself, your family, your community?
I was just telling Adrian that I'm going to need healing from the healing.
You're going to need healing from healing? And how can we support you in that?
We need a lot of silence.
A lot of silence. I agree. Silence is good.
I'm reminded of a quote from King that starts off, "We cannot drink the tranquilizing drug of gradualism." And that gives me hope when I think about, the campaign, the Community Coalition, and a host of others launched Free the People this past week, and seeing Black and brown communities unite to ensure that there's affordable housing, to ensure that there's safety in communities, to ensure that there's access to green spaces. And so I'm inspired, hopeful, optimistic as I see communities, young people, communities, Black and brown communities, sort of rising up and continuing to rise up and stay strong even in the face of adversity. And so, when I exit this space, that's what I'm going out with, that feeling of hope and optimism, and still mindful that we have a lot of work to do. That we cannot just simply rest on the laurels and the wins that have been made, but there is so much work that can be done. But we have to proceed looking at the fact that there are folks who are ready to, who are not ready to, who are on the battlefield, fighting to ensure that the challenges that we see across our communities are not the challenges that we face 10, 20 years from now. And so that's what I'm feeling right now. And I'm, I just want to go back to the point around narrative and how we can be helpful. I think it takes an informed, responsive, educated media. And we have that right here with obviously Tavis and KBLA, who is ensuring and is shining a light on folks that some people feel are throwaways. And that's an important part of how we help the mayor, is staying consistent in terms of shining a light on these issues that are challenging our city. But I leave out of here hopeful and optimistic that the best is yet to come.
Great, thank you. Anyone else?
I feel committed. Weary, I have to acknowledge that. I feel the weight of the pain of Angelenos and Black Angelenos in particular. This conversation is a reminder that we can all walk away from the studio and go to our cars and our families and the comforts that we have as people with agency, but so many in this city cannot. And so that's sobering and a bit exhausting, but I feel committed and resilient and thankful to be a part of such an esteemed panel that remains inspired and remains hopeful and can see the brighter future for this city, can see the possibility in that.
This is Tyrone. I feel appreciative. I feel grateful for the folks who are here, folks who are listening, folks who are in our audience. I just feel renewed and recharged that I'm not alone. Sometimes you're out there fighting these battles. You feel like, okay, am I the only one who sees and feels and hears these issues? But this evening is recharging for me. I'm thinking about the fact that there's so much more to do. And so we just can't become complacent. So I'm thinking about what more can I do? How can I be a better advocate? How can I be a better ally? How can I be a better activist in that regard? But I'm reflecting on how do I take care of myself as I do that work, because it can become taxing. It can become exhaustive, as you mentioned. It can become overwhelming at times. And you oftentimes think, if I don't do it, who will?
Right.
If not now, when? So those are just some of my reflections and thoughts and feelings.
Great, thank you.
Capri Maddox here. I definitely echo some of the statements that were made, particularly by Dr. Howard. It is exhausting to be an African American in America. I want to be intentional that, some folks that are listening to us that are sick and tired of being sick and tired, they don't have the agency that we have even around this table. And what I say to them is that, we have to keep the faith and we have to keep the fight. Because again, as Alex said, we can't graduate our way into solving this problem, and we need to be intentional to be at the table, because if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. And so we need to, step up. We need to speak up. We need to activate. And our community, one of the reasons we have as much strength and power as we have politically in Los Angeles and other places, even where our numbers aren't as high, is because we do know how to organize. We learned that from the civil rights movement. We taught a lot of other people how to organize, for that matter. So that's, like doing what you know is something that you shouldn't forget, even in 2023. And we're going to need to be united as a community, and we're going to also need to work on coalition building and support and uplift groups like the Community Coalition that uplift, the Black and Brown communities in the experience. Because when they come for one of us, let's be clear, they are coming for all of us. And so we need to come together. And, I'm a mother of a 17-year-old son. And we cannot let this world fall as it relates to some of the harms that are happening to Black folks, and to say it's okay. And so wherever you are, wherever your positions lead you or take you, you need to speak up and you need to step up. And in my job, I speak up for all communities, but I want to be intentional to let you know, as the African American that runs LA Civil Rights Department, I'm not going to be silent when I see African Americans other. And we're going to think of ways to lift all communities, but we need to be intentional to call out wrong when it happens to our community first, early and often. And I think, I'm inspired, and I know that together we will make a better Los Angeles, a Los Angeles that is truly for everyone.
I guess we're coming down the line this way with these final comments. I'm sorry, Adrian, with these final comments. I'm sitting here listening to everybody, and I'm thinking specifically, Alex, of your invoking two words, hope and optimism. And I want to come to that. And I've thought about this for years and talked about it any number of times. They're not the same thing. Optimism suggests there's a particular set of facts, circumstances, or conditions, something you can see, feel, or touch, that gives you reason to believe that things are going to get better.
Gives you hope.
And I ain't going to lie, I'm not there right now. There's no evidence to give me reason to believe that things are going to get better. Nothing I can see, feel, or touch. Hope, very different thing. So I'm with you on the hope part. I am as hopeful as I've ever been, in part because, as to Capri's point, as Black people, we have proven time and time again that we can build entire lives on hope. Our work and our witness is built on hope. And the Bible that I read says that faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. That is the story of Black people at their best, that we build. We take that next step up a dark stairwell, as Dr. King once said, even when we can't see it. So I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to say in this moment that I am optimistic, but I am a prisoner of hope. I am eternally hopeful. And since you mentioned Dr. King, I'll close my thoughts with these words from King as well, because he is my hero. As those who listen to my program know that I regard him as the greatest American this country has ever produced. Yeah. And King once said, cowardice asks, is it safe?
Right.
Expediency asks, is it politic? Mm-hmm. Vanity asks, is it popular? But conscience asks, is it right? And every now and then we must take positions that are neither safe, comfortable, nor convenient, but we do it because our conscience tells us that it is right. In this moment, if our conscience doesn't tell us that what we're doing around this table tonight and beyond to make this city a better place to live and work, if our consciences collectively and individually don't tell us that, then God help us all.
Thank you.
You should have closed because I'm going to go back to exhaustion.
That's okay. I'm going to wrap it up in the positive.
I mean, I feel like there is a way, and we talk about the resilience of our community, and it is true. But resilience is exhausting, and to have to do it over and over again. I think the one thing that grounds me in the work is thinking about the fact that Los Angeles has gone through collective trauma in the past, and the aftermath of that is always us being stronger, and oftentimes that trauma is at the expense of Black communities. And we are always stronger coming out of it, and so I try and stay grounded in that. Thinking about the children, right? I was on a panel recently, and someone said that the class of 2041 is born this year. And I thought, wow, if we ever had a reason to rededicate and recommit in the midst of all that is going on, there is a question for us about what are we handing over. The class of 2041 that's born this year. And that's a reason to, refocus and figure out ways to recharge and do self-care and all of those things, because there are those who just got here.
Excellent.
And we need to pave the way.
Excellent. Thank you.
I'll just say I'm thankful and grateful for the opportunity to be here with each and every one of you. I think the truth is that we are a village, and we're going to travel so much farther together. And in this pursuit for justice, there ain't no giving up. And because we're together, we're definitely going to get there.
Thank you. So wrapping it up, I first of all want to give thanks to KBLA and to Tavis for having Days of Dialogue.
Yes.
Come and have this conversation. I want to give thanks and gratitude to each of the people that took time to be on the panel tonight. And want to give a shout out to my hero, who, along with Dr. King, is Reverend James Lawson, who couldn't be with us. I met Reverend Lawson in 1998, and he's been mentoring a small group of us for all these years. And it's because of him that I end up where I'm at, sitting at this table today. And I'm so grateful for the opportunity to grow, to listen, to participate. And as I said at the very beginning, I really consider these conversations a sacred space. And this is the place where it starts, where healing starts. It's from this place of authenticity, the place of truth-telling, that solutions, everything that needs to change, I don't know the word I'm looking for, but just it is from this place, this sacred place, that change happens. And so I thank each of you for being here and being a part of that conversation, a part of that change.
Let me close, if I can, Candace, by thanking you for being our interlocutor, our facilitator today. I'm, again, pleased that we could all be a part of this panel today. And I finally want to close, as I began tonight, by thanking the Institute for Nonviolence in Los Angeles and its leader, Avis Ridley Thomas, for convening us and bringing us together and choosing this August panel for us to all be a part of. Stay tuned in just a few seconds. If you missed any part of this conversation, here come instructions right about now for how you can hear this entire conversation. Candace, we thank you, and we thank all of you for being here as a part of this conversation tonight at KBLA Talk 1580.
We hope you've enjoyed this KBLA Talk 1580 exclusive, Days of Dialogue, the anatomy of anti-Black racism and bigotry. If you missed any part of this spirited conversation, not to worry. An encore presentation of Days of Dialogue, the anatomy of anti-Black racism and bigotry, begins right now on KBLA Talk 1580.